Hey guys, it's Pineapple, and I guess I just honestly want to have a short discussion of sorts about what I think about all the stuff that has been going on in My Hero Academia since the last time that I really spent some time to talk about it, right? I think the last My Hero video I have is teaching people how to play the strongest hero, and since then I think it's released globally, or has it not? I don't know, but I know people are easily playing it now, right? So I should probably talk about what's been going on in the manga before I continue to, do weekly manga content and just randomly pick up with Star and Stripe versus Shigaraki or whatever. So we're gonna just talk about, in general, everything I think about what's been going on, let's say at least since Deku left UA in chapter 306. And might be a little too late, but I'm gonna say spoilers. Spoilers are definitely ahead if you're an anime only. If you are an anime only, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what they did to you this year. That is just something that, man, there's a couple rant videos that I just didn't upload and that I definitely recorded, and I'm glad I didn't upload them. Going back and listening to them, it would have been a lot. So let's just talk about it. Let's just talk, not even so much about this season. Let's just talk about, of course, the manga. So, of course, in like chapter 306, Deku leaves UA. And since then, we've had like a very kind of like a one volume arc, Deku solo arc. I know a lot of people wanted that to go on longer, obviously, but I was pretty happy with it. There are some things that I don't like about it, but I guess we're going to get into those things. But just my first impressions, or I guess my impressions on that arc in general, I really like the idea of Deku going off on his own and then training with One for All, because that's really what I see that arc as. I see that arc as a big training arc for Deku, and it's a training arc for the final battle mainly because that's where Deku sets his mindset in stone for like how he's gonna approach Shigaraki in the final battle, and he learns that, like he says against Nagant, not to jump too far ahead, but like he says against Lady Nagant, or maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong, but like he says against her, like he sees that not everything is black and white, that the world is full of grays and stuff. And there was a lot of times in this arc where I felt like, okay, finally we're getting some really good characterization for Deku. Not that it's been completely missing throughout the series. Like, it's completely valid for Deku to have been your favorite character throughout My Hero. Like, he's pretty much been mine for the most part. If you go back and see, a lot of times like Hawks has been there, but like a lot of times I would answer that Deku's my favorite character. It's a boring answer. It's whatever. I guess I'm kind of going off on a tangent. So Deku goes off on his solo mission where he learns about the world and learns things aren't like I've thought they were up until this point, right? And he starts to kind of have like some personal growth while also, taking some time away from school and beating some villain ass. Honestly, let's be honest about what happens in this arc. Deku goes around ragdolling a bunch of villains, and I guess that's where we get to like my first complaint about the arc is it should have been a little longer, if not only for us to see some of those fights that Deku had in detail. There was a point where we got like 4 or 5 panels on the same page of Deku just kind of like cutting through different areas and fighting villains and, showing like just a montage pretty much of what he was going through. And I don't personally have faith in Bones to adapt any of that. Like they might cut it, but I just don't have faith in them like doing the thing where like the mangaka kind of like leaves you breadcrumbs and then you add to it. I don't have faith in them doing that stuff anymore, right? So it's just kind of like sad because we could have had this fight with Deku and this giant sea monster, Deku and like, Spinner's, people who are inspired by Spinner instead of Stain, and just all these different villains and stuff. And we didn't really end up getting that, even though what we did end up getting, which was Deku versus Muscular, Deku versus Nagant. I do really like both of those fights, even though I guess for Muscular, you can't really say it's much of a fight. He kind of beat Muscular's ass. I also really like Shindo, is that what his name is? Shindo being brought back because of the popularity poll, and then Hori just throwing him in there literally for no reason. But I was thinking at the time that would kind of be important because, of course, Shindo knows who Deku is. Eventually, he'll piece together who that was, or his girlfriend. Like, eventually, they'll piece together, oh, that was Deku. And maybe they could be people who, like, if it was ever a mystery, they could point out, like, no, it was actually Deku, or something. But that never really ended up being a thing. I really did like the whole like urban legend around Deku that was kind of like swarming up. It was very Batman-esque, very like early on Batman, where people were like, there's this guy and you do not want to be in his path. Like, you just don't do crime. Just don't. He just shows up and he's caked in blood and filth and like, just run, man. Actually don't. Just lay down on the ground. Apologize. Maybe he won't leave you in whatever position. Like, that's how people were treating Deku, like a 16-year-old boy. I digress. We have both those fights, right? Deku pretty much one-shots Muscular, and then Deku fights, I mean, the fandom's beloved baby at this point, Lady Nagant, who, of course, you know, has her sniper stuff going on. We got to see Overhaul again for a little bit, and I was wondering if Overhaul was gonna, you know, have some sort of importance. And it seemed like for a second that Deku, maybe I read it wrong, it seemed like for a second that Deku might have agreed to taking Overhaul to his boss, who is, we know, in a coma, only because Overhaul put him that way. I figured that we were going to see more between the two of them, and we didn't end up seeing that. And I guess that is just really like going to be my only problem with this arc. Oh, no. There's another big one. But let me talk back. Let me talk that one down. Let me talk that one. That's going to be one of my major problems with this arc, I'll say. That there was just like, it wasn't long enough. This arc could have went on for 2 volumes and it would have been perfect. I know it went on for like 1-ish, right? But if this arc went on for like another volume, let's say, we would get to see those extra little fights of Deku fighting whoever. Then we would get to see more interaction between Deku and Overhaul, or maybe Deku taking Overhaul to his boss, or like whatever it was. This was just a very needed arc, right? Like, if you watch My Hero Academia, there has been a point where you're like, okay, this school stuff is cool, but I need Deku to get out into them streets. Like, I need Deku to get out there and fault some people. You know what I mean? Like, I need Deku to get busy. I need to see what he could do with all these quirks. Like, yeah, that's cool, but I'm not trying to see you fight your classmates over and over again. And, you know, like, I need to see more of that Deku versus Overhaul. I need to see more of that, like, crazy bad, the war arc, like all that kind of stuff. But I would like to see it with Deku just patrolling the streets, you know, just taking a couple days out of the week during, you know, school or during the summer, now that you have your license, to just patrol the streets, and then running into this villain, that villain, you know, whatever villain, and building his rogue gallery, you know, because that's kind of the big thing. Deku does have a very impressive rogues gallery. He has Muscular, Gentle, which some people laugh that I mentioned Gentle, Overhaul, Shigaraki. Like, over the course of the series, he has built up some great villains. But I'm just really a big fan of recurring villains. You know, villains who, it just seems random how you come upon them, you know, and then just that first meeting links you guys. Like, they are going to be a pain in your side moving forward, no matter what. But I guess since we're moving towards the final act and the final arc of the series, there's not really time for all that stuff. So I do really appreciate that Horikoshi is looping back to a lot of things. That's something that we've seen in this arc a lot. Just looping back to like stuff from the first chapter, people from the very first early chapters, like Power Loader, I think is the hero's name, or Knuckle. What you know what I'm talking about. And then the guy with the stars on his head from the very first chapter, and just like all these different things that remind us like of how long this journey has been that we've been on for Deku and for the other characters, and how much growth they've had, and just how much has changed. You know, like a lot has changed in current My Hero society compared to the first chapter. People aren't comfortably taking trains to work and enjoying giant villain and hero battles. So I just think it's very important to recognize that things are in a very different place, and Deku can't just bring things back to the status quo. And that's something that I think they kind of touched on this arc quite a bit, that things can't just go back to normal. Things are absolutely not allowed to just go back to normal. It can't just be this thing where people think they have no responsibility and, you know, heroes are going to take care of everything. Deku's whole job as, I mean, maybe not his job, because this is a lot to put on one person, but not as a person, this is his job, but as a character in this series, within the narrative of My Hero Academia, I've been saying for a very long time that Deku's role is he has to somehow change all of hero society. Like, it's not enough to just defeat Shigaraki and then everything goes back to normal, because that kind of spits in the face of the whole theme of My Hero. If you don't change things so that another Shigaraki will never happen again, then you've completely missed the point. right? And I feel like that gets paralleled in a lot of ways in the series, like how when they saved Eri, it was very much like okay, we can physically save Eri by beating Overhaul. Cool. But like, there's more work. There's more work that all of us have to do. And only through all of us doing that, like, can we successfully save this girl? And Eri is like such a good representation of all the children that are like that in the series. You know, and I like that Hori keeps hammering it in by giving us white-haired children that lose their family and get placed in a strange situation and literally just probably need to be saved. Shigaraki is like that. 9 from Heroes Rising is like that, where both of them, for whatever reason, you know, one reason or the other, they lost their families at a very, very early age, and then they kind of just stumbled through the world until they were affected by a villain, the worst villain, and contacted by him and set up to be part of this like all for one perfect, Nomu program or whatever it is, right? Like, Deku has to make it so that people like All For One can't just go shopping for victims to create into the next madman. Because like we learned in My Villain Academia, all it takes is one bad day for someone to become the next big villain. You know, that's all it takes. And All For One, we've seen, is very capable of taking that little moment, the tiniest of moments, and twisting it and breaking it and making it so much worse and just dragging that person along. And we saw that also in this arc. All For One manipulated the hell out of Deku during this arc in a way that I was very, very excited to see, and in a way that honestly had me thinking it kind of makes sense. And people are going to hate that I'm about to mention this, but it kind of makes sense if that is his father. I feel like it makes sense for All For One to not have mentioned that to anyone and just keeping it to himself. I think it makes sense. And I think people are always like, well, why wouldn't you say it? Why wouldn't you say it to All Might at Kamino? Why wouldn't you say it to Deku? Why wouldn't you say it in the Vestiges? Why wouldn't you? Because my opinion is, it's kind of like less valid now, because as we've seen, society is on Deku's side mostly. Or, I mean, just the people who are at UA, which I would imagine is a lot. But my original idea was that All For One was going to do this thing where he leads Deku into all these situations where he's going to have to keep dealing with explosions. He's going to have to keep seeing people die in front of him. He's going to have to keep failing at saving somebody. And just All For One is trying to strip down every aspect of being a hero that Deku is fighting for, to wear him down to the bone. And then, before Deku is able to like unite everybody, I figured that All For One was going to try to do something to stop that, because honestly, that's the biggest threat against All For One. Everyone uniting behind Deku is a very, very scary prospect to someone like All For One. Maybe not actually like to him, because he's very proud and very confident and he has plans for everything, but like in actuality, really, that's the biggest problem to him in the narrative, because the way that All For One could win against Deku tactically is just turn society against him. Just give him nowhere to turn when he needs the most help, and then he's done. Deku did such a good job at isolating himself from everybody who cared about him, everybody who could help him, and then he desperately was rushing and looking for All For One. It would have been nothing for All For One to have some sort of grand message go out through all the TV stations and all the, screens in Japan and everywhere, and just say, hey, this person that is going around with multiple quirks is my child. This is my son. This is the person that you're relying on. Like, if you think this is the person who is going to save you, this is my son. And knowing how society was before Ochako's speech and how things were before Deku pretty much came back to UA, I honestly feel like that would have pushed everyone over the edge. Everyone was already so distrustful of Deku and having him there and all this stuff. And then it took a lot to honestly convince them to let him into UA. But I feel like even if it's a lie, honestly, even if All For One says that and it is not true, it's a convincing lie. It's a very convincing lie. And it's a very damaging one. Like, you have to overcome, if you're Deku, you have to somehow convince people, okay, maybe that's true, but I'm not like him. And that is hard. That would be very difficult. And I feel like that's something All For One definitely could have explored, or maybe he can still explore it some way, but I don't think he will. I just think Hisashi is a deadbeat at this point, right? Like, where are you at? Where are you at? Maybe not literally a deadbeat because he's across the seas working and sending money to his family, you would assume. But it's just very odd to me that Hisashi has been apparently gone all of Deku's life, it seems, and we haven't even had Deku think about him one time. Actually, maybe one time. But you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of sus. And I know anime parents aren't super important, you know, like we never really saw Sakura's parents and blah, blah, blah. But I guess let's just get to what my biggest problem with the recent arc that we've had is. And that would be the bath. The bath pissed me off, man. Like, Deku going through all that, having his design change, the eye. I mean, I didn't expect everything to stay the same, like his outfit, but like his eyes, you know, being the kind of way that they were, I guess because he was tired or whatever, but like his hair, like it just was different, right? And that all just being fixed with a bath. And I know people are going to be like, it's not fixed with the bath, it's all still there. The trauma doesn't just go away with the bath. He internalized it. He's facing it. He's dealing with it internally. You act like this is in manga and you can see a person's thoughts. You know, you can see everything Deku's thinking if Horikoshi decides that you just write it down. We see Deku's thoughts sometimes. So I just really want to see like this dealing with this trauma and this internalizing and what Deku learned and you know, what were the consequences of doing that? And I guess it's just that they're being pushed away further, right? And a lot of times when some of these consequences get pushed away, the resolution isn't necessarily the best, right? Like, who knows? You know, I figure that the last time Deku and All Might saw each other, where, you know, Deku left them in the rain or whatever, would be the last time that they saw each other, period. And then you had All Might walking away from the school and all sorts of stuff, and then, like, they met. And then everything was just cool. You know, and I know that it's not actually just all good. I know that, like, Hori isn't a bad writer. So, like, I know that what Deku did there by leaving All Might behind really set, like, the triggering moment for All Might's character moving forward. Because that was the defining moment where All Might was like, yes, like, that confirms it for me. I am actually useless. Like, there is nothing I have to offer here anymore. I can't even help my own student. I can't even tell my own student to take a rest, that it's okay for him to take a break. And you know what? On one level, that whole thing is completely deserved, because All Might, I had a video a long time ago on my old channel talking about, like, All Might and Deku having a somewhat toxic relationship, because I mean, they kind of do, honestly. Like, All Might's not necessarily the best teacher, and All Might has the best intentions, but you do instill some things in your student when you're a certain way, right? And when you have a certain outlook on things, that might not be the best, right? Like, it's hard for All Might to teach Deku to be this person who relies on everyone and all this stuff when Deku has looked up to All Might, and that's not how All Might has been. So at Deku's best moments in this arc, he's thinking for himself. He's, you know, he's working with his teammates, like towards the end of the arc when he started accepting everyone and, like, you know, whatever. But at his worst, and I mean, really his coolest, because that's what everyone wanted. Everyone wants Deku to be like All Might, like the raw merchants, I'll say. All of us raw merchants want just some moments where Deku is just like All Might. Like, and I know the people who are here for Deku, like, plot-wise, like character development-wise, are like, no, but that's bad. Like, he already learned that he's not supposed to be like All Might. You know, like, he already learned that he's not supposed to be like All Might and doing those things, because that's the wrong thing to do, because that's going to get him hurt. And that's going to fail, because All Might failed. and you're the next one and you have to come up with a better solution. Deku has already learned that lesson. But in this arc, with all the emotional manipulation and all the just crazy stuff going on and him being worn down, I feel like he definitely fell back on what was comfortable, right? He fell back on that image of victory that he gets from Bakugo. He fell back from that image of just dominating the villains and saving everybody that he got from All Might, right? Like we saw at a point in this arc, Deku stopped asking. Deku is completely, he started the arc off like, I'm gonna ask people, why'd you do this? Like he's like Drake in the strip club. He's like you don't gotta do this. Why are you doing this? Come on, man. You know? And later on in the arc, All For One starts sending hitmen and Deku just starts folding them. No conversation. You know what? I don't even care. I don't care why you're doing this. I'm gonna beat all the bad guys. And that mentality of just beating all the bad guys to get to the conclusion and win, that's not gonna work. And I'm glad that we've gotten to the point now where we see that, you know, that's not gonna work. Everyone has to work together. It takes a village. I've been saying that for a long time, that it takes a village in My Hero Academia to truly like save somebody, right? And the somebody here is gonna end up being society, right? And also Shigaraki, right? If Deku truly honestly is trying to save Shigaraki, it's gonna take everybody. Even if it ends up in a one-on-one fight or a two-on-one fight or whatever it is, it's gonna take everybody, because you have to save him from the man that wants everything on Earth for himself, you know? And I feel like no matter what, All For One is doomed to have everything that he wants crumble in the palm of his hands, you know? I feel like no matter what, like he's not gonna get what he wants. But I think part of like defeating him is letting him think that he has it. I think definitely part of defeating All For One is letting him think he has what he wants and tricking him or giving him what he wants. Maybe he doesn't actually want it. Maybe he doesn't understand what comes with that. Because in my opinion, if you give All For One, one for all, I mean, don't literally just give it to him. Really, my perfect scenario would be if Deku somehow got All For One, like the All For One from Shigaraki, like maybe Shigaraki was gonna, you know, Shigaraki does get saved by Deku or something, and he just gives Deku All For One, and he's like, my fight is over. Like, my fight is done here. And then Shigaraki goes and decays himself in All For One's physical body, right? Because, you know, we know Shigaraki, if he uses decay too much, he's gone. He's dusting himself. And if he gives Deku All For One, he's losing his regeneration. So that would set up a way for, I mean, I feel like we've all been calling at this point Shiggy killing All For One at some point, putting his hand right in the same place that he put on his father's head and just dusting him. But I feel like to do that, he's gonna have to dust himself. I feel like to do that, he is gonna have to dust himself with just how like All For One's not going out without a fight. And I would love to see Shigaraki versus All For One with Shiggy just using decay. Like, that would be so raw. That would be so awesome and meaningful, right? Especially if we do end up finding out that that's a quirk that All For One gave Shigaraki. But even if not, that would just be very meaningful. But I think the final battle in this series could end up going into a couple different lanes. I honestly think we'll end up seeing Shigaraki maybe taking out All For One at the end, like his physical body. But that still leaves that vestige version of All For One inside of the quirk All For One, like the original quirk that I'm assuming that Shigaraki would be giving to Deku, or that Deku would somehow get. And that presents a very odd problem, because from there on, you have to have the vestiges sort of deal with there being an All For One inside of that world, right? Like, I assume that if All For One and One For All are connected and united in the same person, gosh, I can't imagine how hard that would be to handle on a body, right? Like, having all those quirks, if you're not literally All For One himself, like, I don't know if Deku could literally handle having all those quirks, or if that would kill him, or, you know, if he would literally explode, like was foreshadowed when All Might was explaining to him, you know, overwhelming yourself with One For All. But I feel like internally, we're gonna maybe see a battle between all the different vestiges and All For One. And I think before then, All Might will die, so that All Might can be one of the people who, and one of the vestiges who keeps All For One trapped for eternity. Like, once they defeat him inside the quirk of All for One, like, and get rid of that, like, you know, body controlling aspect of All for One and stuff, who would probably try to take over Deku or whatever. Like, once they defeat Vestige for one, that's over. The Vestiges, I would assume, could imprison him forever, or maybe just Deku would be hit with a quirk erasing bullet, and you would just have to get rid of One for All and leave Deku quirkless, like he started the series with. But I just feel like all of the solutions for the ending of My Hero, somehow we got here, all of my solutions for the ending of My Hero, based on what we've seen in this arc and based on everything that's happened so far, kind of end sad for Deku. It's bittersweet, you know? You save the day, you change society, you make sure that that can never happen again, and then you give people hope by showing them that, like, hey, I was one of you, and the only thing that made me any different is I have an unresolving will to save people, and you can have that too. We all just have to help each other. And no one can ignore it. You can't ignore something when you see it, but it's not just your responsibility to deal with it. We all need help, and we can all give help. And I feel like that's a very big and important message in My Hero Academia. That's a very big and important message in life, folks. To learn that we all need help and we can all give help, and, you know, help is never too far away. So that is my thoughts. That is my long-winded thoughts. I said it was going to be a short conversation on everything going on in My Hero Academia since we've last spoken. I'm going to be maybe doing a prediction video on what I think is going to be going on between Star and Stripes and Shigaraki. Is it Star and Stripe? And Shigaraki in the next chapter, and, you know, what's going to be going on just going forward. And yeah, I hope you guys are excited for that. I hope you guys are happy to have me talking about My Hero Academia again. And yeah, I mean, thank you so much for being here. If you're here, if you're not, you're missing it. So you can follow me again on Twitter at Vocal Pineapples. My original Twitter got suspended, so please do follow me on there. And please, of course, turn the notification bell on or anything, you know, all that stuff. And actually, please like the video. That's a very important thing. Please like the video. If I can get this video to 500 likes, I'll drop an Aoyama theory video. How about that? I'll drop an Aoyama theory video. I've been talking about it on Twitter so goddamn much. I'll do it. I'll finally drop it and talk about why I think he's the traitor and why I think things are going to be bad in this upcoming arc regarding Aoyama. If you realize, Aoyama hasn't been in the last like 6 chapters when all the other students have been. If you realize, Aoyama hasn't looked at the camera like he has the entire series, or at the audience, you know, he hasn't looked at us since the Deku solo arc began. Since he suggested that they don't go after Deku because, you know, whatever reason, when everyone else is trying to go after Deku. Aoyama has that weird art at the art exhibition where he's standing in front of, like, you know, or sitting somewhere, and it kind of looks like, you know, this weird All for One like thing is coming through the pipes, and he's letting it in. And I feel like that's going somewhere. That's not nothing, folks. So let's talk about that. There's some very suspicious stuff going on with Aoyama. If you want to get sort of updated, I already have an Aoyama trader theory video up. This video I'm talking about is going to be an update with all the stuff that's happened since then. But 500 likes and you'll unlock that, and we'll just get that out of the way. So I love you guys. This is Pineapple. I'll see you guys later. 30-something minute video or whatever. Let's see after cuts. But peace.